Well, good morning, everybody. Chris, thank you for the kind introduction, and I'd like to thank TropAg and FABA for this opportunity. And Chris, thank you personally for making the connection and allowing me to be here with you all this week and this morning. I am Sean Leighton. I lead food safety, quality, and regulatory affairs for Cargill worldwide. Um, and this morning, I kind of thought, as a part of the TropAg theme, I thought it would be really interesting to have a quick conversation about, as we think about global food and its challenges. One of the ways we can address those challenges is to get a little bit better at managing the risks that those challenges are presenting to us. And risk management is a critical aspect of what I and my team at Cargill do every day. And I think we have sort of a unique and sort of interesting approach to where we're making investments to get better at managing our food safety risks, our risks to regulatory compliance worldwide, and our risks to quality and meeting our customer expectations. So I hope to share some of that with you. And what you'll see there is that there's also some technology advancements that we've applied to this approach that I'll wrap up in a little story to share with you around where we've made some of these applications in the last couple of years and how they've added value to Cargill, to our customers, and to public health and consumer food safety. First things first, I hope to share with you just a bit about Cargill, because it is a U.S.-based food company, ag company, but we operate worldwide. We actually operate in over 70 countries across the globe. 160 years of experience. We have almost 160,000 employees worldwide. My team in food safety, quality, regulatory affairs is made up of about 5,000 people worldwide, from myself all the way out to the third shift laboratory technicians. There are about 5,000 people doing food safety, quality, regulatory work for Cargill, and they make all of this happen quite effectively. I should say that Cargill has a growing interest in Australia. In fact, as recently as the last week, we announced the completion of our acquisition of the Tees Beef organization, a partnership that's been growing for the past 15 years or so. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful learning experience. I was just there on Monday visiting some of their operations and meeting their teams. And we're excited about the opportunity to collaborate even further with Tees and their legacy and rich history here in Australia. So this is Cargill at a glance. One way to think about this is sort of in this little flow chart at the top. I won't read this to you, but I hope one thing that you take away is that Cargill really is a global leader in sort of from farm through the initial processing of agricultural commodities, of various food ingredients. We do, from in place to place, have direct-to-consumer businesses. In the U.S., our beef business goes direct-to-consumer, and across Southeast Asia, we have various oils that are on the shelves for consumers to buy. We actually have a tomato sauce available in Brazil, of all places, which is sort of fascinating to see and work with that team. But we really make a difference through making connections. Connections are really about people at the end of the day, and I hope that's a theme you take away from our discussion here this morning. Bringing unique perspectives, right? So one of the things that when I met with the Tees team on Monday is bringing a global perspective, bringing Cargill's perspective to the Tees business here in Australia, and listening to their perspective on how they do what they do across the beef industry here. We really value different perspectives at our organization. We try to think ahead. We're a very forward-leaning organization. I think you'll see some of that here shortly. And of course, none of this is done effectively unless it's done in a sustainable way. And so we pride ourselves on some of the investments we've made to do all of this more sustainably. Double-clicking into FSQR, just briefly, you can see our purpose there. My team is to protect our customers, to protect our consumers, and Cargill's brand and reputation through our commitment to food safety. through our commitment to regulatory compliance. And my team has built this framework around protecting what's good, first and foremost, protecting food safety, protecting our consumers, doing that in a sustainable way through systems and processes. And then, and only then, can we be a part of Cargill's growth conversation. All right, and that's sort of an interesting layout, right? Number one, protect what's good. Number two, make sure you systematize it. Because if McDonald's calls me and says, "Hey, Sean, how do you manage E. coli S-Tech 0157H7 E. coli risk at this facility?" And I say to them, "Well, I just call Jim." That's not sustainable, right? And it's hard to grow the business through our excellent processes when the process is to call Jim, right? What I'd love to be able to do is share with them transparently what our process looks like, where we test, how we test, what the results are, transparently. That's a part of the growth conversation at Cargill. So let's get into risk management across this space, right? How does my team, how does Cargill think about where we should invest, where we should make choices in this increasingly crazy, risk-laden world that we are all living and operating in? The World Economic Forum published this just recently. I think as recently as October, if I'm not mistaken. And what you'll see, without looking at the numbers, is that executives, leaders across various industries, I think, align on the world is getting riskier. That's basically the takeaway from this slide, right? If you look down at the bottom, the outlook for the world economy is going to become stormier, whatever that means, more turbulent, right? And less stable, and less settled, and less calm over the next 2 to 10 years. That's what this slide says. So the level of risk we all have to manage, the level of risk we all have to be able to make some sense of is increasing, right? My CEO says the amount of change we're seeing will never be as calm and settled as it is today. And that's what this slide says. So how do we do this? At Cargill, we think about 3 priorities to managing risk. 1 is our people. 2 is the data that we have access to. And we'll talk a little bit in a minute here about the importance of data and the growing value of data to managing food safety risk. And last, and quite deliberately lastly, is the application of technology over those 2 things, people and data. So I'll walk you through this, and instead of just kind of sharing slides on risk management and some of the risk data we've digitalized and structured and applied some governance to, I thought I'd tell you a story. And the story I hope to share with you here is about the biggest, nastiest food recall of my career, which occurred in late 2020. Not a food safety recall, but a compliance recall. And this was a global recall at the end of the day of locust bean gum. Yeah? You guys know locust bean gum? It's used primarily as a texturizer in many dairy-based products. Some of our largest customers, Nestle, Danone, others, Mars, purchase locust bean gum, typically in a blend with some guar gum and some other additives to give the ice cream, to give the frozen novelties, to give sour cream and some mouthfeel. And we source 100% of our locust bean gum out of Turkey. The green part of that map is where it's grown. Okay? This is harvested by locals. There is no locust bean farm or locust bean plantation that we work with. This is not a supplier quality management opportunity. This is literally locals bringing baskets of beans into a collection point and being paid for them. That's how it's done worldwide. There's only 2 or 3 other places in the world where this is grown, parts of Spain and other equatorial parts, but in Turkey, it's really one of the primary locations. This recall was one of the costliest recalls of my career. No food safety risk. In fact, I'll lead with, at the end of the day, the regulatory agents, Cargill, our customers, never detected any of the contaminant, which I'll share with you in a second, in the finished product. It was detected in the raw locust bean gum, but never detected in the consumable product to this day. All right. The contaminant in this case was an ingredient called ethylene oxide. Some of you may be familiar with this ingredient. It's used primarily as a sterilant. It's a highly effective sterilant. It is detrimental to yeast, mold, bacteria, viruses. It's also used as a ripening accelerator. All right. Okay, so that's the situation. I think I've laid the groundwork there. Ethylene oxide and locust bean gum is the most costly recall of my career. I've been doing this for about 25 years across the Coca-Cola company, a dairy company, and now Cargill. And this was big and bad and nasty. And I'm about to show you why, how we could have anticipated this risk more effectively had we had the right investment in our people, the right investment in our data, and a little bit of technology along the way. The traditional way of managing risk, many of you have seen this. No consultant leaves my office without showing me a 2x2 matrix of some variety. Well, here's the traditional risk matrix, right? The likelihood of something occurring times the hazard, the importance, right? The criticality, the detriment of that particular hazard. This is how we've addressed things for about as long as I can remember, probably beyond my time, right? Well, Sean, where does this locust bean gum recall fall in the traditional 2x2 risk matrix? Where do you think it falls? Right there. We've never had a recall of locust bean gum for ethylene oxide in the history of what I can remember. I looked back, searched it up, as my kids would say, couldn't find any history of ethylene oxide contamination in locust bean gum, at least not published. And the criticality of this bugger, it's a compliance thing. Actually, if you expose an ingredient to ethylene oxide and then you turn it over and aerate it, the ethylene oxide actually dissipates into very benign byproducts. So very, very low risk from a food safety perspective. So that's where I would put it. So how in the world did this thing turn into the biggest recall of my career? All right, I'm about to share with you how this happened and why we probably could have, should have, and today we do manage this more effectively. Number one, this is the global price, the futures price of locust bean gum on the open market. All right, this recall occurred at the peak of that high price. It's my experience that when prices jump by 400% or drop by 400%, supply chain practices change, right? Let's use a wonderful Australian product, wine. If you're making wine, if that's your business to produce wine, and it's $2 a bottle, in the States we call it $2 chuck, because Trader Joe's sells a crappy wine that costs the consumer $2, right? If you're making $2 chuck, and you get contamination somehow, TCA, right? Tainted corked wine. What do you do with a pallet of $2 chuck? You dump it. Moving on. All of a sudden, that price of that $2 chuck drops or increases by 600%. What do you do with a pallet of contaminated $2 chuck when it's now worth $2,000 chuck? What do you do? Whatever you have to. All right? Whatever you have to. So it's my belief and my team's belief that what happened here with locust bean gum, the price jumped, warehouses of locust bean gum sitting idle with some sort of contamination. We don't know what, but we hypothesize that it was probably mold. And what was pennies per ton is now dollars per ton. What do you do with a warehouse full, thousands of tons of locust bean gum when it gets contaminated with mold? Whatever you have to. How about call your scientists and see how we get rid of the mold? Expose it to ethylene oxide. Highly effective at killing mold. Great idea, right? Seal up the warehouse, fumigate, mold gone. Wonderful idea. That person probably got a raise that year. Okay? Who owns these data? I lead a team of food safety, quality, and regulatory affairs leaders. Who owns the data around the future's price of locust bean gum? Not us. The traders at Cargill. We have thousands of them monitoring the price of every known agricultural commodity worldwide every single day. They own these data. Fold that back in the back of your mind and just keep it right there for 1 minute, okay? As luck would have it, locust bean gum has a 3 to 5 year shelf life on it. Okay? 3 to 5 years. The application of this locust bean gum, you remember what I shared with you? Where does it go into? Sour creams. Okay. Frozen ice cream, frozen novelties, ice cream bars. You know the shelf life of an ice cream bar or a frozen pint of ice cream? Depending on the company and the location and the type of ice cream, something around 2 to 3 years. Add all of that up. When this thing goes wrong, you're looking at 5 to 8 years of product. Okay? Who owns? So that's a risk, right? That's a risk. My goodness, if something goes wrong with an ingredient that you're producing that has a 2-week shelf life and you ship it from Brisbane to Sydney and that's it. Okay, something goes wrong, 2 weeks, big deal. When you're producing this worldwide and it's got a 5 to 8 year window and something goes wrong, big problem. Okay, who owns these data? R&D own these data. I don't own shelf life data. I ensure we meet certain specifications to meet the shelf life expectations, but I don't own the data. I can't change it on my own. There's a spec management database and a shelf life database at Cargill at R&D manages every single day. It's not mine. Fold that back in the back of your mind. The sales and the commercial team make sure that our customers are getting the shelf life that they expect. Okay? If we're not getting the shelf life that we expect, guess who owns that? Our sales and commercial teams. Okay? We ensure the compliance up to here, but from Cargill to a customer is our sales team. And if there's a problem with something coming out of that shelf life, feedback coming from the consumer, coming from the customer, our sales team owns that. So now, so far, you've seen 3 or 4 different stakeholders in this little recall, right? So who owns this risk? Here's another one. Thousands of foods withdrawn from market. Ethylene oxide risk for consumers is low. I shared that with you already. Look at this, sesame seeds. Do you know that 4 months before this major recall went down, there was a global recall for ethylene oxide in sesame seeds that took sesame seeds and baked buns off the market in Europe across the entire continent. You couldn't get a sesame seed bun, McDonald's or otherwise, anywhere across Europe for about 6 weeks because of ethylene oxide in sesame seeds. So ethylene oxide was on the European Union's regulatory radar all of a sudden for the first time in over a decade. Ethylene oxide contamination. Whew. Sesame seeds. We don't grow sesame seeds. We don't sell sesame seeds. We have nothing to do with sesame seeds. So why should I care? The regulators now have been alerted to ethylene oxide as a global contaminant. Who owns this? Who owns ethylene oxide contamination recalls of sesame seeds due to ethylene oxide contamination? Well, regulatory affairs does. Government affairs does. Okay? Another stakeholder in this mess. So what you see through all of this is 2 things. Let's go back to our two by two, right? The likelihood of a risk occurring is based on the quality and availability of your data, right? You can search it up, you can Google it, you can look through your own internal data and see what you got. The importance of the risk relies on our ability to collaborate, connect, build relationships, and trust with people outside of our silo of food safety, quality, and regulatory affairs. Even within our silos, within FSQR, it's sometimes a problem. Okay? So our ability to manage growing risks in food safety, quality, and regulatory actually depend on 2 things. The quality, structure, digitalization perhaps of our data, because data in a 3-ring binder in the basement of a plant is not data. Okay? And 2, our people. And our people, our leaders' ability to collaborate and connect with other people. So we peel back the layers of this concept of risk management to two things: data and people. And at Cargill, we invest in our leaders accordingly. You can see here, these are 4 agilities that I'm investing in our FSQR leadership team in daily, right? I want my FSQR leadership team to be tops in these 4 things. 5 years ago, I hired a lady named Susie Sawyer, who is my food safety digital lead. She manages all of our data, all of our digital within FSQR, within Food Safety, Quality, and Regulatory Affairs. And I've been criticized of building a shadow IT organization at Cargill. Those are fun conversations, aren't they? Sean, you've had 13 people under Susie Sawyer doing nothing but digitalizing food safety. You've built a shadow IT organization. You know what I say? Yeah, I have. And you want to know why? Because getting in line at Cargill for an IT project request behind SAP, ERP investments, behind other financial platforms we're investing in, behind HR platforms saying, we'd like to do something about our risk management over here, right? Is asking the organization to make a choice. That is a ridiculous choice to make. That's like waking up in the morning and saying, do you want to drive to work or take a shower? Yeah, why am I making that choice? Right? So I said, yeah, I'm going to build a digital food safety organization. I did that 6 years ago, and you'll see how that paid off in spades. Susie and her team have helped us with our data agility. Not only is she leading this work for us, but she's training us as microbiologists and chemists on what SAP is. 3 years ago, I couldn't even spell SAP. That's my joke for the morning. She's training us on technical agility. She's training us on some of these digital agilities, right? We don't know how to code, right? So this has been a growing, the futures of ag and the future leaders of ag, the future leaders of food are not going to come up through the traditional channels of microbiology and chemistry. They're coming up through this space. They will be IT leaders who have experience and SMEs under them leading food safety. The world is about to turn on this leadership space. Watch. So what you see on this is like what I just did for you is I took a flat 2-dimensional 2x2 and I turned it into a multiple dimension risk management matrix. Do you know how hard a multiple dimension risk management matrix is for a human being to manage in their own head? It's like a chess master that thinks 11, 12 moves in advance, and we as, scientists probably think 2 or 3 on a good day. Right? So thinking through multiple dimensions of all these inputs, shelf life data, pricing data, historical data, customer data, all of this stuff is really hard to manage. You know who manages multiple sources of data really well? Computers, right? And so I'll share with you a little bit what we built to do this. We call it the Cargill Hazard Alert System. We built it. I'll jump forward just 1 minute. McDonald's last week just called me saying, can you build it for us? I said, yeah, I got to think about how we're going to get paid to do that. But yeah, sure. What a compliment, right? And what this system does is it scans the external environment for, remember the sesame seed conversation? Scans the external environment repeatedly for that kind of stuff going on. Not just our products, all commodities, all ag. See what's on the radar today. It pulls in shelf life. It pulls in pricing data, millions and millions and millions of data points every single day from something we call the Price Hub internally at Cargill, which we had no access to prior to this. Proprietary data called the Price Hub. If there's a 600% jump in a commodity, we'll know about it now. It pulls in some EIU, economics intelligence data around social corruption. One of the issues we had here, and I apologize to anybody in the audience who's from Turkey, but one of the issues had here is that the Turkish culture is not forthcoming with these data when they come up. So sourcing from Turkey is a source of risk. So this Cargill Hazard Alert System pulls all of this together. I'm not going to drain this for you, but you can see the complexity of this alert generation is intense. Here's what Susie and her team have built as sort of the drums on the left are data sets that she's written. She and her team have written the APIs tying all of this data together. external sources of data, internal sources of data, our data, and it's growing. This thing started with 9 sources of data. Today it's 13. Cool, right? Really cool. Here's what it looks like. I don't know if you can see this, but you kind of get a sense for like the market, Germany, the country, I can't really read all that myself, but you get a sense like the issue that had occurred. So this is the alert that it pulls together. And I'll share with you that here's another screenshot that the challenge here has been, I'm going to wrap here in 1 minute. The challenge here has been not the technology. Susie Sawyer laughs when I say the tech is the easy part. She's like, easy for you to say, right? Her team worked really hard on this. It took us over 18 months to build this thing. The hard part is our people, because this technology has transformed our way of thinking, our way of working. Historically, our SMEs jump when there's a Cargill-related potential recall that we're managing through. What this asks them to do is jump when, my last slide, when there's mineral oil detected in potato chips in, thank you, Holland. This asks my SMEs to jump when there's nanoparticles detected in bleaching earth, which we use for processing some of our commodities every single day. This asks my team to jump when there's a chemical contaminant in oats, not ours. So it's completely changed our processes and our mindset and our culture, which you all know takes time and is real work. That's been the hard part. Year to date, I checked this week. Year to date, we have mitigated 24 potential recalls through this Cargill Hazard Alert system. Now, I don't know for a fact that had we not gotten ahead of mineral oils and potato chips, that it would have been a recall for Cargill or one of our customers. I don't know that for a fact, but what I do know, we deployed the system, data coming in, signal. My SME team reached out to suppliers saying, we're seeing about mineral oil and potato chips, and sometimes our suppliers go, huh? And we go, start managing mineral oil in your products, please. We're going to start to manage it on this date. We're giving you a heads up, 6-week notice. Start to test, start to mitigate, start to look at it for us. 6 weeks, we're going to start to do so. So signal detected, action taken, and nothing resulted from mineral oil and potato chips at Cargill. That's good enough for me. 24 times this fiscal year starting June 1. So this approach, I'll wrap, of an investment in our people. I hired Susie Sawyer and 13 people to do digital and train us on how to manage our data more effectively. Our investment in our data, digitalizing shoeboxes, reams full of paper, right? I love to walk around our labs in our facilities and tour the lab, and I walk in and there's a lab manager. Oh, nice to meet you. And I go, what's that over there? And he or she will say inevitably, oh, that's a printer. And I say, oh, cool. What's the printer for? And they look at me like, are you dumb? It's where we print out our analytical results. Oh, we're printing out our analytical results, are we? Let's have a chat. Like, we need an investment here. Should be instrumentation, digital data going right into a solution. No printing out. Those are the investments in our data that we're making today. Boring? You think my boss, if he says, hey, Sean, how was your year? So you think you had a good year? And I go, yeah, it was great. We digitalized 17% of our available data. He's going to be like, and that's it? That is a huge swing. And it's a cultural thing. Our leaders have to understand the value that our data has. They have to understand that building a little shadow IT organization, even if it's one person, to help you do this is a critical investment in your people and your data. So thank you for your time this morning. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope you learned something about our approach to risk management. It's all about our people and our data, and then the technology will come. I've loved Australia. I've been here for almost a week now. It's been an absolute joy. It's a wonderful country and wonderful scientists that I've had the privilege of meeting. I think we have a couple minutes for some Q&A, if I'm not mistaken. So I will turn it over to the process. Chris, are you the process driver?
Sean Thankley. Yeah. Please join me in thanking Sean. So we do have a couple of minutes for questions. There are roving microphones, please. There's one at the back there. Any questions? Yes, we've got one down the front here. Thank you. And if you could put your hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That was easy.
Thank you. Joseph Eyre from the University of Queensland. Coffee. Excellent presentation. I really love what you're doing, and I'm interested in other areas, how we can implement things that are proactive, but how do you present that as a business case? Like, what's the return on investment that someone wants, that something that never happens?
It's such a good question, and I think you've got probably three choices. One is to do what we did, which is wait for a crisis to occur. I mean, that was the business case here, literally. Ethylene oxide and locust bean gum, and I went, window is open for basically a blank check for whatever I need to do, because this thing costs, I can't share the number with you, but millions and millions and millions of US dollars worldwide. So when I say, guys, I'd love an $800,000 investment in this, they go, anything else? Oh yeah, while we're at it. So option one, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Right? You've read that before, it's true. Option two, work for a company that, or an organization, it doesn't even have to be a company, that understands the value, the future value of doing this work and will invest in it accordingly. And if your boss, CEO, board doesn't understand the value that an approach like this might have, I think it's very short-sighted. Option three, which I am a big fan of, is just do it. And it's easier to beg for forgiveness than ask for the green light sometimes. So just start to do it and show the value of it. And by the time they realize what's happened, the business case is right in front of them. A little riskier, that last one, but I think it's better than the first one. So, great question. Thank you. Thank you very much. Other questions? Good. Yeah. Awesome.
Hi, Sean. Dave Shearer, Australian National University. So it was a really fascinating insight. And the insight that I really got was that even within Cargill, you have these silos that creates risk in terms of the exchange of information. So, but when I think about your themes around people, data and technology, there are also themes important to the public sector for public good. And many of us in this audience are focused on that public good, public sector attribute. I wonder what lessons you have from breaking down the silos within Cargill enable you to have some insights to how we break down the silos between the private and public sector.
Oh my gosh. I may have to take that question with me. That is
we can do that afterwards if you.
Yeah, that's the sort of the holy grail of what we're trying to do, in a sense. I think I may answer it, kind of reframing it just a bit to get to the vision. I think in the future, the future in, we'll call it trust. Yeah, which is really breaking down silos between the public and private sectors is trust. And I think thinking about investing in leading in that interface of trust is what will crack that code. And trust, we know this, right? The public sector doesn't just give out trust freely. It's generated over time. And so I think the stepping stone to ultimate trust is transparency. And my food law team will slap me on the wrist when I get back to Minneapolis, Minnesota for saying this. But data visibility, pure visibility to some of what we're seeing in the public sector and turning that over to the private sector, turning that over to the public sector, to the consumers, which is like, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're doing. And I don't know, it's not all pretty, but we're getting there. I think that level of transparency will get us to trust ultimately. And there's all kinds of processes we're looking at to try to get there. Certification, Rainforest Free Alliance, and all of these organic certificate. All that's trying to do is provide some transparency to the consumer, to the public sector. So I'm kind of getting around it ultimately, but I think that's investments in transparency will get us to what you're talking about. How do we break down some of those silos between the two sectors? It's a wonderful question. I'm going to think a lot about it over the next couple of days, so thank you for that. It won't be able to get out of my head. Thank you.
Hi, it's Mark Turner here from the University of Queensland. I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you.
Mark.
Can I ask about the locust bean gum and I guess the reason they use the ethylene oxide? And you said that it was probably due to fungal contamination during storage.
Yeah.
So was there any evidence of mycotoxins present in the locust bean gum, or do you think the ethylene oxide might have degraded that as well?
Yeah, no, we looked at that actually pretty extensively, and we weren't able to detect any mycotoxin presence in the gum. That we had retained samples, limited volumes, right? But we had actually a pretty good retain sample program going within our facility, and we tested it for mycotoxins. We tested it for the presence of mold. We tested it for the presence of various pathogens that could potentially survive that drying process, and it was all clean. So the other angle that some of my team, we're a house divided on this issue because we don't know. Half the house says mold contamination. Half the house says ripening accelerator. Because if you can get, it takes time for these pods to ripen. Yeah. And if you can accelerate that process when the price peaks, you're in the money, man. Right? So half of my team thinks that this was nothing more than trying to accelerate the ripening process. Either way, it was brutally painful. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah.
And final question.
One more. Cool.
Hi, my name's Rod Bauer. I'm a food technologist. Thank you for your presentation. It was very valuable insights. I'd just really like to know, what do you think is the biggest challenge in food safety and quality in the world right now? And is it people related and caused by, the corporate machine not feeling that food technology and quality and food safety is a valuable part of the corporate plan?
I will tell you the second part of that question first. Whatever the biggest challenge is to food safety worldwide right now, I don't know if there's just one, but whatever it is, it's people related. I met with a select few folks on Tuesday evening here as part of the FABA collaboration. And part of my talk was that all the tariff-driven trade barriers and changing supply chains to the detriment of availability and food security and price and all of this stuff is actually all just people-driven. It's all caused by us. So the biggest challenge to food safety today, I think it's depending on where you look and what product it's going to be very, very different. I mean, in the States, we've got salmonella on farm and feedlots in our cattle lots is a huge problem, and there's no good way around it. Here in Australia, it's going to be something very different, like labor availability in North and West Australia. So it's going to be different everywhere. But I can tell you, it's caused by it. At the end of the day, it's caused by people. At Cargill, we firmly believe that we are the problem and the solution to much of the vision that we sort of we aspire to. Great question. Thank you.
And we have the last question.
Oh, the final last question. Have we been saving this one? Yeah.
Hi, good morning, Sean.
Hi.
I'm Nur Anis from Food Safety and Quality Control Program, Ministry of Health, Malaysia. So I have one question for you. How does the hazard alert system fit into Cargill's broader decision making and policy updates in terms of food safety and quality and food crisis issues, especially to in line with the governance policies and to cater the multilateral or bilateral between countries? Thank you.
Specifically, I want to just clarify the question for 1 second, so don't give the mic back quite yet. Specifically, our Cargill hazard alert system that I shared?
Yes.
Yes. It's not fully integrated yet because internally I'm still socializing the benefits and the excitement that we have about this. Number one. Number two, where it has integrated already is with our procurement team, right? So managing the points of supply is a huge output of all of this. And our supplier management on the food safety and quality side sits hand in hand as of 3 years ago with procurement. And procurement either loves or hates this. I'm not sure which yet. Right? It complicates things in a big way, and I think they're kind of like, ugh. And I think when they see that we are managing suppliers in a proactive way, and actually what it's doing is it's forcing us to build a relationship with our suppliers. They love that. They love that. So that's one place where it's integrated into Cargill's policies and Cargill's processes outside of the food safety initiative. We're growing some of the others. It's a sign that I'm done. That is the ultimate. Hang it up, Leighton. Okay, I want to thank you all very, very much for being a great audience, for the wonderful questions, and I enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sean, and it's my pleasure now to hand over to Ian Godwin for the next presentation. Thank you. Or introducing the next presentation.